Hi, and welcome to this new Q&A with Professor Spira, who's coming back today. Thank you so much, Spira. Thank you, everyone, for being here. So we'll spend another hour together. Today I have prepared a bit of a theme, so we don't have to stick 100% to that theme, but the theme is around a question that I have for myself and that a lot of my clients have also, which is when to detox and when to be more in a building phase for the body. And I think Professor Spira, you're a great person to have to share on this because I find you're both really knowledgeable in terms of how do we transition smoothly, but also you like to go into more deep cleansing journeys, right? So do you want to start a little share on this, and then we can take some questions?
The concept of detox and build, we tend to think about it a little differently than some people that use that terminology. Some people use that terminology, and there is this they have protocols where you detox for a certain period of time, and then there's this rebuilding phase they'll talk about, and those are newer methodologies that that aren't particularly too impressive to me. The mucusless diet healing system approach, which is the background I come from, is one where it's like a perpetual cleansing process where the way you live, you are always cleansing, and your body starts to dictate to you when it wants you to dig deeper, when it wants you to fast, or when it wants you to do some kind of deeper detox thing or get into some herbology or whatever. Like when you learn how to actually read that from your body, as opposed to a prescription, which is again some of the people that I've heard use that type of terminology, that detox and rebuild or build. They there's almost a prescription mindset where it's like, okay, we prescribe 20-day water fast and then eat this for several days to start rebuilding and then eat that. And it's like, that's not really our approach. Our approach is you get on the system, on the transition that we teach, but there's a certain point where the body starts to take over and dictate to you what it wants you to do. Where, because sometimes it wants you to eat something, because there's some people that will resist eating something because they're using their mind, thinking, well, the more fasting, the better. And so they're okay. I'm not eating. I'm just not going to eat anything, and that's great. Or I'm going to do 5 enemas, or they'll just start kind of making things up. But then I've seen those same people when they actually start to go through an elimination, they get some cold and flu-like symptoms, or they get a fever or something. First, they're in denial, like, oh, I eat so clean. Why do I feel like this? Why am I going through this? They have no understanding that that's actually a good thing. That's an opportunity for you to actually 10x your results in terms of the detox process, because your body it's telling you, this is a great opportunity. What I want you to do, stop eating, go lay down, drink some water, some juice, or do some enemas, or whatever protocol you're into. And I've seen people, if the difference between doing, is not all fasting is created equal. Uh, I've seen people try to do like just a I'm doing a 10-day fast because I feel like it, because I want, just in my head, like, I'm going to do a 10-day cleanse. And I've seen it not really do anything positive, and in some cases end up being negative because they don't break it well, and they end up eating a whole bunch of foods that you should never eat anywhere near a fast. But I've seen other people do a 10-day fast when their body dictated to them, where they started going through elimination, had some fever, cold and flu-like symptoms. And so immediately they shut everything down. They make the phone calls they need to. I'm not coming to work today. I'm staying home. I'm going through, we always say elimination. We don't use the word sickness. So I'm going through this elimination, and 10 days when the body is in that type of state and you do a fast in there, and you maintain control, you break it properly, you don't go on some kind of mucus binge at the end of it. Now I've seen that's where you can heal decades worth of stuff with a well-timed fast. Just all kinds of old latent illnesses, things that you would have experienced when you were, way older, in your 70s or 80s or just later in life, all those illnesses that you would experience at a later date, you actually bring them forth now, and you're able to deal with them in a more effective manner and a safer manner, because it's safer to do some of those types of eliminations in a younger body, obviously, than an older body. Because in an older body, lots of times those type of eliminations end fatally. They become fatal eliminations, whereas you go through the same thing that you would have gone through later, you go through it now in a younger body, then it's not fatal. You might not feel good for a few days and be complaining or whatever, but you're fine. You're going to make it through it. And once that elimination is gone, that's gone forever. So that's kind of my initial thoughts on just that concept, on a mindset in terms of approaching that concept from a certain perspective. So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Professor Spira. And yeah, for other people, you can unmute, but or if you prefer, I think the best you use the raise hand feature in Zoom, and we take that in that order. Yeah. I'll have questions if you don't. But yeah, I love that you have a very body-led approach, actually. So Saul was saying it's like yoga. I'm also a yin yoga teacher, and when we teach to that is I say, okay, now that's the next posture, but it's always led by the body if your body wants to do something else. And that's something we really need to retrain ourselves to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, Dennis and Zizi, if you want to ask, you can unmute as you both have your hand up.
Hi, everybody. I just want to ask how important are enemas in your fasting time? I think this is an important question.
Yeah. So I'm in the pro enema camp. I know there's different different opinions on the topic of enemas, but I'm a particular type of enema. So I'm not a fan of coffee enemas. I'm pretty much exclusive to lemon juice and distilled water enemas. So I got my little lemon here. So yeah, the lemon juice and distilled water enemas, I've found them really to be invaluable in terms of uh, at all stages of my transition. In the early days, it was when it was hard initially getting off of meat, coming from where I came from, because I had a really gluttonous diet, a really bad diet, and I was the type of person that there's no vegan on the planet that would have persuaded me to go down this path. They could have showed me all of the slaughterhouse videos and all of the horrible ways that animals are harmed and murdered. It wouldn't. I didn't have the empathy yet. I had to cultivate the empathy through the cleansing process. So again, it's one of these things where I'll get in discussions with ethical vegans, and I'm saying that's not going to work. That communication style is not going to work for everybody, because you're dealing with sociopaths and psychopaths, people that don't have the capacity to experience empathy, to feel what another sentient being might feel. So coming from that, I say that because I know there's also a lot of people in the raw vegan community that will make a similar type of case where they're like, oh, well, you just gotta just start or do this or that. That wouldn't have, for somebody like me, that wouldn't have appealed at all. There would have been no way that any vegan or raw vegan or anybody from that coming at that approach would have got me to begin this path. The mucus diet healing system had the specific approach and the transitional methodology that stuck. along with it's one of the most dynamic things that I've ever seen in terms of diet, because it's the only system I know of that can take you from an initial part of a transition that might include some dairy products or even some meat or and how you transition at that level, and then 50-day water fast and dry fasting, and the potential for humans to go really long times without food. The concept of vitality equals power minus obstruction. There's nothing else on the planet that I know of that is that dynamic, that can take you all the way from McDonald's to, for lack of a better word, breatharianism, than the Mucus Diet Healing System. And so for me, that was that was the key understanding, was that transitional methodology and understanding. As we get cleaner and cleaner, that's when that empathy comes up, where you can actually feel what's happening, feel to have that level of empathy, to want to get off of meat or want to become a better person.
Thanks, Spira. Do you want to go next, Dennis?
Okay, I wanted to ask, in terms of mucoid plaque, and let's say doing like juice feasting, for some people say it takes 40 days on juices and you need to drink this amount of juice every single day, and then you start to get it out, and then of course incorporating enemas. So my question is, how long do you see mostly with people, with your clients, to do like a juice cleanse? And then how many enemas? Is it like 1 a day, 2 a day? And what about the route of like psyllium husks, bentonite clay, and all that stuff? So there's not like a specific question, but I think you kind of get the direction.
Yeah, and to finish up with as that goes right in from where the point that I was making with the whole empathy thing, was on days when I was craving meat, that the lemon juice and distilled water enema was everything, because that allowed me, because when you're sitting there and you're really dealing with like real addiction, this is real addiction, and you really take it seriously for what it is, and there's nothing forcing you. I used to have these coupons for these, it was like large pepperoni pizzas that I would buy almost every day. It was at the college for like $5. So I have that no one's forcing me to get on this path. And so I could either for $5 go get a whole pizza to myself, or I can, I don't really want to eat a salad. I don't want to eat fruit, but the one thing I can control is doing an enema. More in the beginning, more so than controlling what I put into my mouth. And so once the poison is gone out of the system, once you get that residue of the dead animal carcass and all that out of your colon and your intestines, the craving for meat goes away naturally. And so there's no there's no trying to force yourself to do it. It's not a question of willpower. It becomes just a question of mechanics, and you get that stuff out of your system and you start on the beginning of the cleansing process. Then you are starting to allow the body to squeeze out the waste and get deeper and deeper into the tissue system, to the point where now you're really squeezing out some of those deeper toxic waste. And then you're now you're on the path and you're having a higher conversation. But in terms of juice cleansing, I always tell people to start with Professor Arnold Ehret's recommendations and methodologies that he talks about in both rational fasting and the Mucus Diet Healing System, which is it's really a day-by-day process. So you start and this is what I love about the system, because the whole thing is edging you toward being able to sustain longer fasting periods naturally. And so he doesn't just start you off with, okay, go do a 10-day some type of fast or a 21-day cleanse or whatever. It's let's see how you do eating one meal a day. Let's see how you do eating nothing but fruit for a day, or maybe have nothing but fruit juice for a day. You know, the one meal a day plan. Then you can extend that a little bit. And while you're doing that, that's the one place where Eric's very clear with his recommendation to do and while you're fasting, to be doing enemas at least every day during the fasting process to kick out all this stuff that's being squeezed out into the system, to just aid the body in helping to move that stuff through. And that's where all, you know, a lot of our people start getting all the good old, I got to show y'all the mucoid plaque pictures. I start, my clients all start getting this kind of stuff coming out. And yeah, you can pass some of that stuff without the enema, or the enema can, it's come out as mucus, slime, bowel movements, but the stickiest of it, it's not coming out. It's going to be sitting up in there on the lining of the intestines and the intestinal wall. And what blows people away is they can be 10, 15, 20 days into eating no solid food, fruit juice only, and doing enemas every day, and they're still having natural bowel movements. And the enemas, like, this stuff is coming out on day 20, day 25. And so it puts into perspective how filthy we are, just for physiologically. But I recommend people, this is our edition of the rational fasting by Professor Arnold Ehret, with all of those. And got of course, the mucus diet healing system. But that the method of getting yourself, edging yourself toward the longer fast, and then being ready to do a longer fast once the body tells you that dictates it to you. And that's what I try to teach people is, there's a number of people in our community that'll do fast one day a week or 2 days a week or a couple days out of the month, or it doesn't have to be long and hardcore, especially if the diet is of a cleansing nature, a transitional cleansing nature. When you start to feel anything, you start to feel, oh man, I got a little headache, or you got a little, instead of what we were taught in regular society is to either ignore those signals or take a drug to suppress and ignore those signals. But instead, when you get real sensitive and you're like, okay, I got a little bit of, little headache. What's that about? Okay, let me do an enema and go lay down, or let me, get a fast. And the more severe the thing is, it's like, okay, I'm feel a little achy and I don't feel right. Enema fast. Like, I'm just that needs to become a habit where it's just a reflex, where it's like, oh, I don't feel good. You don't even think about it. I'm fasting right now. And if the body is wanting you to do the 10-day or the 20-day fast, or like, well, I used to do 6-month long, I don't promote that or tell people to do that, but in it's like the 3rd, 4th, and 5th year of me practicing the diet, for like 4 years in a row, I did these really extended periods of juice fasting. But once you start going that long, then it's not really like I don't even call it a fast anymore. That's just, you're just liquidarian, you're living on fruit liquid. But yeah, so for me, all of this stuff, when you're talking about diet, enemas, the herbs, all those things are tools. And we can get into the prescriptions of how those tools are used. There are general ideas and general principles, but the specific ways that they're going to be used will be unique to each person's situation, in terms of where they're at, how old they are, how much acute ailments they have, and latent illnesses, and different types of symptoms or any kind of diagnosis they might have. You know, you take all that into account when you're recommending different levels of fasting. For instance, last year I worked with somebody, and I have their testimonial is up on one of my sites. Mike, he was he had cluster headaches for the past 20, so it was like 25 years or something, 27 years, he said. And I'm not sharing anything private because he says all this in the testimonial. And he was an example of somebody, you know, he was earlier in his transition, but the symptoms that he was presenting elicited me to recommend that he do an extended fast. Because you don't see me talking about that in like where I'm always recommending long fast or something in my videos. I'm very much focused on transition. But like I said, if I'm working with somebody and their body symptoms and everything is telling me, okay, this person needs to fast, then so he ended up doing something like 20, 25, I think 25 days on juice and enemas, and the cluster headaches went away. Along with, and when that's the kind of stuff happens, then all this other stuff starts healing. And he was saying his varicose veins was going away and his skin was getting really clearer, and just all these other benefits were happening, but those cluster headaches went away. He had a marijuana addiction that he was able to get off of as well. That was like a 25-year marijuana addiction that he was able to kick in that period. So that's what I mean by the power of a well-placed, properly placed extended fast, as opposed to just doing it whenever to try to like kick something up. Because that's also how some of these folks that are, you know, vegans or raw vegans, and they're real hardcore, like, yeah, get off the meat and do this and eat 100% raw. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they do a video with a title of something like "No longer vegan and here's why," you know, or now I've eat raw meat and carnivore now, or whatever, you know. And we all know these people. And in every one of those cases, there are people that were extremists and did not respect the power of these tools, did not respect the power of the fruit, did not respect the power of any level of fasting or juice feasting or mucus-free eating or raw eating. They just didn't respect it. They thought they were, and some of these folks are kind of arrogant. And so they think they're better than all that. They think they're so much more advanced than physiologically they really are. And so, yeah, they might have been able to do some great long, man, I lived on nothing but mangoes for a whole year, or whatever the story is. And then out of nowhere, overnight, they're like, yeah, I'm a carnivore now. If they had actually transitioned properly, it would be impossible for them to do that. It would be impossible for them to go back to those kinds of foods if their physiology had transformed and changed in the way that it's supposed to, in the way that it will, when you practice these things properly and you allow your body to go through the process and you respect the process, and you really respect the methods and how powerful these tools are, and how great of an opportunity this is to have this information and to be able to, and this knowledge and this wisdom, to be able to act on it. Because we can't say that about all of our ancestors, and we can't say that about all different people around the world. And, you know, not everybody has the opportunity that we have. And so for me, I'm just, it's a blessing. I'm just grateful to be able to do this.
Thank you. And yeah, people, when you have question, you can, when you're next, you can also just unmute and ask on Night's Usal.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Thanks, Professor Spira, so much. This is my first day in this group, so very, very interesting stuff. And actually heard about you through Dr. Robert Morse. Spira. So he's my mentor right now. So I'm learning a lot about the detoxification and, you know, the herbs and stuff like that. And and I found it interesting earlier what you had mentioned about the, you know, going through this process allows the body to heal future, you know, like the healing process, like things that we would eventually not succumb to, but experience, whether or not, you know, whether we do the work. So just like yoga, my teacher in yoga, he said, you know, the reason why we do our practices every day is because that increases the time for the body to heal, or minimum. It's, you know, and it's better to do it at a younger age. I never linked that to what we're doing here with the fruit, the detox, and all that stuff. I'm curious to, you know, kind of get some information on where you learned that. I'm a guy that likes to, like, that I hear it, I love it, you know, and I want to get deeper into like understanding that, like, if there's a source outside of your book. I did order your book, it's on the way, but you know, you with Arnold. So that's just like a first question or statement. And then the second thing, I don't know if you want to tackle one at a time. But my second thing is I'm one of those guys that did a 40-day grape juice fast back in 2020. And and I felt great, but I don't feel like I really eliminated a lot from that fast. I lost like 75 pounds. I went from 225 to 150, looked real skinny. I looked sick, but I felt great. I didn't look sick. It's just the skinniness, you know, wasn't a good look on me. And then after that, I started getting like cold. I was always cold. And so I, like, mentally, I was like, oh crap, I messed myself up. And so naturally I went back onto meats and stuff like that. But, you know, kind of, not really. I stayed vegan, but then I started going back to meat just to kind of put more weight on. And then sure enough, my body was like, nah, because then more things started developing, you know, health wise. And so I was like, so now I'm back in this space again. And this is why I'm in this community here. Thank you, Alex, for inviting me. And just here to learn more. And this time, you know, just kind of have a community around me because the first time I was alone. But you know, there's not a lot of people out here that, you know, they look at you crazy when you're like, oh, I'm just fruit, this salad, you know, whatever. But I can't explain like how good it feels. But now you know, I'm getting certified. I got certified, and I'm just looking to like you help more people, but, you know, mostly experiment on myself and just go real deep into the science.
Yeah. So for the first question, where's all this come from? So yeah, two things, just a lot of studying. You know, I'm a big study person that believes in studying, and I've had periods in my life where you know, I'm an artist and musician, and as well as an academic or someone that went through the whole academic process and went to, you know, we got 2 master's degrees and a PhD. And you know, so I did that realm, but the main interest for me in that realm was the ability to be a professional student, because I just love to study and break things down and read and analyze. And so there's a number of things that come from my own contemplation, or just putting things together, working with people. You know, I kind of have absorbed a lot of different things, and then with my own gifts, I'm able to you know, do certain things in terms of my kind of recommendations, and, you know, that's kind of stuff if I'm actually working with somebody. But there's that element, but I also had the opportunity to be around some great mentors when I got into the mucusless diet. So we started this path 21 years ago now, and I was 19, and I there was very little back then. I mean, you think there's not a lot of vegan, or, you know, this community and stuff now. Back then there was nothing, because no one was talking about vegan, vegetarian. It was like, it was just not a mainstream concept that people discussed publicly yet. It was just like this, like a dirty little secret, and there was not a lot of people around that
Right.
did any of that. And it was before online communities, and so it was just that wasn't there. So what happened, the person that introduced me to the diet and the Mucus Diet book and all that kind of stuff, he was connected to a local community that had families living this way of life, raising children on this diet. And I don't know if you've ever seen my before and after pictures. These were taken a year apart.
Oh, wow.
Here I'm about 300 pounds, all kinds of ailments from sleep apnea to daily migraine headaches. I took pharmaceutical medication since I was 7 years old. Chronic constipation, used to have crazy hemorrhoids, and just just not good. Then then a year later, but after 6 months I lost 100 pounds, but this is a whole year later, and just total transformation. And I didn't do it overnight, and in that period I wasn't doing a whole lot of fasting or anything yet. I was really just practicing as best as I could, just practicing the transition diet. So there were still things I was eating that were not great, or not things I'd recommend people eat, but it was part of my transition. And but being in that community, we used to have roundtable discussions. So where other communities, they'll get together and party and dance and drink and eat, like we're getting together with a roundtable talking about vitality equals power minus obstruction, which is the formula to life in the Mucus Diet book. Or we're talking about immortality and breatharianism, and we're just getting into some really heavy discussions. The more real answers to human morphology, why we actually look the way we look, and things have happened to us the way they did. Just I'm having these type of discussions, and that's really fueling my understanding, being able to have these mentors, and I'm picking their brain. So I'm asking all kinds of questions, and then really analyzing and contemplating and doing the work, and putting it all together. And so that gave me a really good foundation for where I was able to take this information. And then I have 10 years into practicing the Mucus Diet. I had went through the different stages of this process when you're really digging deep. And this is one of the reasons why we recommend, because we know how much work there really is to be done, and that it's futile to try to rush through it, because people have that mentality. It's like, oh, if I work harder, I can. It's like, what people generally don't understand, the kind of the kind of damage that we've done to our bodies and over the generations, and the kind of work that is required to really transform the blood. That's what we're trying to do, reconstruct the bloodstream. And so and these were all things I learned early on. I'm glad that one thing I'm thankful for was I did get into this before all of the online stuff, because I was able to focus and really develop a mastery of this one discipline from this one perspective. And that's one of the things that I think is a negative element. There's pros and cons to everything. So one of the negative things of the modern day internet, kind of internet culture, is the people not really mastering one paradigm and one thing, and then once there's a mastery of one particular really strong fundamental perspective, then going to all of the other different systems or people or concepts, and having something to bounce it off of. What I see is a lot of people take a little bit from a whole lot of different places, and it's become a cultural, something that people are patted on the back for doing that. Like, oh, I take a little bit from everybody, but when you do that, you only get this surface level with a bunch of different things, as opposed to getting incredibly deep. And that's what I did with the mucus diet healing system. I got incredibly deep with those studies. Now, 10 years in, I started to go through some things physiologically that caused me is okay, now I got to get even deeper. And that's why I started studying Dr. Robert Morris. And so I did did do a deep dive on him. And so I'm very well acquainted with all of his methodologies. And and he talked at we have an annual event, and he had talked at it a couple years ago. And yeah, so I got a chance to kind of see what he does. And for me, his methods are, I call that like the deathbed chronic illness method. You know, all the folks, when you're dealing with the people that's on the deathbed, you're dealing with the people with the terminal illnesses and diagnoses. It's like yeah, immediately jump on those protocols. When it comes to transition concept and actual daily eating, that's where I feel like we bring something to the table in terms of when you're not on your deathbed and you're not in a crisis situation, then you need to find a balance and a plateau point and eat foods that are not too aggressive so it doesn't cause you to end up going back to meat or to fall off the wagon, but also not too destructive so that you're building up all kinds of slime and uneliminated waste and stuff in your gut. And I know, you know, plenty of, you know, raw food folks that really don't get into the mucus free piece that you end up having a lot of gunk in their system because they you know, they're eating a lot of the mucus forming raw foods, and that's one of their main focuses. And some of that's fine, but it doesn't eliminate very well. I mean, there's a lot of the raw stuff, like the gourmet raw things, that doesn't eliminate well for me at all. So you know, if I'll eat like a piece of that, and then the next day I'm just doing enemas, like, okay, I can't eat that. But yeah, so that's that. Then you said like 40-day break. So I mean, your experience, but that it's typical. There's a lot of people that do that, and for somebody that's already gone through that, then that's when, you know, if you've gone through that and you were able to come back, you know, you have that reference experience to know, like, okay, I see what happens if I'm too aggressive. Because I tell people sometimes, don't get addicted to how good you feel when you're fasting. Don't, because we got work to do. We gotta undo a lot of stuff so you can appreciate how good you feel, but don't get greedy. And you know, and I'm speaking from experience and then seeing a lot of other people. And so the lucky thing is, if you experience that, you fall off the wagon, and like I said, you're back again. Now you can understand the importance of moderation in terms of your transition, how you can, and Dr. Morris talks about that, the concept of you know, knowing how to hit the gas, take your foot off the gas, glide on the brake a little bit, you know, you learn how to drive the transition using food, where you learn, if you know how aggressive, if you only eat apples, how aggressive that is. But you don't have to learn that by doing a 10-day apple fast or a 2-week apple fast like Steve Jobs did, which inspired him naming his company Apple, because he had read the Mucus Diet book and Rational Fasting. People don't know that. You don't have to do that. You can do that. You could just one day a week, you could just sort of do this apple period. Like, okay, one day a week, I'll eat nothing but apples on a day, just to see let's see how that does my body. Let me eat nothing but grapes for a day. And then the other days I'm having a regular transition. But that one day, let me do a fruit fast. Let me just see what I feel. What do I feel like on all mangoes? What do I feel like on nothing but watermelon? You know, nothing but peaches. You get so much reference experience when you come at that approach, as opposed to the approach of let me try to do it all now. Let me just try to do as long as I possibly can with the most aggressive as I can, or or you get the folks that'll, you know, get like 20 herbal formulas and do the grape juice with 20 herbal formulas, and like, oh, they're just digging. And it's like, there's a time and a place for that type of digging, but those times and places tend to be rare, and they tend to be coming off of more of a crisis situation. And so what I like to see is that more moderate approach. Like I said, really, because I've done all those things, so I have those reference experiences. Like, I know what it is to go on nothing but pears. You know, I know what my body does on nothing but, well, pineapple is my favorite fruit, so of course that one. But you know, I know what it is to eat nothing but figs. Nothing, you know, I've just, over the years, I've taken the time to really investigate each one of those different fruits, and just so that's also where my, you know, where my knowledge comes from, is just the experience of going through all these things. And same thing when I did get into Dr. Morris stuff, I experimented pretty much everyone at the time. They keep changing the names of the herbal formula, and there's a lot of new ones, and there's some that are no longer there that I wish were still there. Some of the most aggressive ones that I really liked, he got rid of, because he was saying for some people they were too aggressive. For me, that was perfect.
Yeah.
My body, there was one, what was it called? Lungs number 2, I think. And it was like, yeah, it was a lungs 2. There was some kind of lymph one that was really, really aggressive. And it was like the one that you give to somebody at like stage 4 cancer type of formula. And man, it was excellent. I really liked it, but yep, got rid of it. But I did that same kind of approach that I talked about with the fruit. I did that with, you know, Morris's paradigm, you know, with that, where I picked the one thing, like, okay, this is, let me check this out. So all those different protocols, all those different, you know, I spent time doing all of those. So I know, you know, I know what they do, you know, I know how they feel, what they're doing. I think at one point, the only formula his that I hadn't tried, I think, was, I never tried the female reproductive. I skipped that one. That was the only formula. I think every other formula I pretty much had tried just for reference experience. But I know earlier there was a question about the like the bentonite clay and all that stuff. You know, Morris has his the GI, with the GI broom that has some clay and some of that kind of stuff, and the charcoal and all that. I'm not real into that. You know, I know it's a tool, and there's a plate, like I said, a time and a place for that. I would recommend that to somebody who has an incredibly toxic gut, that has really, really rancid stuff, like the kind of thing where there's poisons that are coming out that are literally like eating they're them eating themselves from the inside. Like, you know, I've had eliminations where the acid is so strong, I can feel it on, like, burning my skin as it's eliminating out of my body. Like, it hits my, you know, my cheek or something, and it's like, damn, you know, get that off of here, because it's so acidic and bad. But that's where I think, you know, the clay, some of those things can be useful, like I said, as a tool. Uh, but you know, I find for me the consistent, because the question is, what are tools that you would use for a short period of time under certain circumstances, and what are the tools that you use consistently? So for us, the lemon juice and distilled water enema became a consistent tool, and certain types of fruit and vegetable combinations, or, you know, things that became, not eating at the same time, but just, you know, in terms of meal construction, there's certain things that are staples, and other things that you might only eat once a year, or a couple times a year, very rarely. And so yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sorry not to take up too many people's time, but because I'm just not familiar, can you explain very briefly what you mean by transition? Like what you would recommend as a transition, you know, at this level where we're more familiar, and then even at the level where introducing people into this mucus free. If it's in your book, I'll read it.
Yeah, well, I definitely recommend get like really check out lessons 15, 16, and 17. Those are the transition diet lessons. But in general, it is you know, as you really go through the book, you'll see how that there's a whole paradigm there. Because for us, you know, I use the word transition all the time, but it's more than just a dietary thing. You know, we see the world through the lens of transition because it's everywhere. It's natural, whether you're looking at the transition of the seasons, if you're someplace that has seasons, and the transition, the way that a tree unfolds or any kind of plant, the human, there is no human that can use their brain and their mind and their willpower that I've come across that can unfold if they're 2 months old. I don't know any either baby or parent that can use their mind to make the unfoldment of that baby go faster to the point where you could just use your mind and unfold the human organism into an adult within a couple weeks. It doesn't go like that. There's certain things that are built in, that are locked into how things operate on this plane of existence. And the transition isn't a choice, it is the law. But a lot of people, they try to break the law and it doesn't go well, and they ignore it, they don't respect it. And so for, you know, in terms of transition, because you got transition diet and then just transition, overall transitional methodology that can be used for everything. You know, we come from a perspective of artists, and all art, the cultivation of artistic ability and skill, you might have start off with some gifts, but the best artists on the planet work on their art every day for hours and hours a day. Working, nobody plays better than John Coltrane played, but nobody really practices longer than he practiced in a day, where 19 hours a day. I mean, he used to fall asleep playing the saxophone, wake up, and he's back immediately playing. And he would stop maybe to eat and he'd get right back. But even while he's eating, he's listening to music or he's analyzing something. So it becomes we bring that type of attitude to the practice of the mucusless diet healing system, and that's opposed to there's some people that get on these pads and they're coming from like an athletic. What's that?
Yeah, can I ask you to wrap up this one a little bit more, because I have we have two more questions and I have another question from someone else, and we can go a little bit over the hour. That's no problem. But
Yeah,
to keep it not too long. But thank you so much, brother. Sorry for that.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, I think you get the point. You know, transition is law. To sum it up.
Shari, do you wanna go?
Yeah, I could listen to you talk for hours. Don't worry. It doesn't bug me. But I mean, mine isn't really a question. I have one quick question, but it's more of a comment. I just wanted to say, like, on everything that you shared. I really appreciate, I tell Alex this all the time, like, for me, I'm definitely coming from more the standard diet. I really so much appreciate what our friend Sol was saying, because I actually live in the Caribbean, but we've been totally infiltrated by, junk food. And my mom is vegetarian, but she went to university for nutrition. So it was like brown bread's better than white bread. And it was like cheese. And I had like hardcore cheese addiction, like still eating like fish and eggs and trying to transition. And then I eat like watermelon for 3 days and I feel great. And then I go like have an omelet, so it's been like such a wild roller coaster. So like I told Alex, it's totally different listening to you guys and seeing the raw fruitarian people with like their baskets of fruit on Instagram and being like, oh wow, like I'm so impressed, like that could be me, then you go out and try to do it and you totally fail. But the comment I wanted to make was something you said very early in the thing, which was so helpful for me, when you said, I think Sol brought it up as well, when you said, okay, your latent diseases, you're actually gonna have to like process them out of your tissues. And that was so helpful because what happens to me is like whenever I get any kind of detox symptoms, then I go back to eating like as even fruit, right? Like if you try to eat the healthy, like the Arnold diet style, you will either get like super strong cravings, like you said, addictions or whatever, parasites or whatever. But then, like, some to me, it's like the symptoms get magnified. So I really appreciate you sharing with us about like how it feels like the acids burning sometimes, or like the symptoms, like joint pain. I get joint pain, and I try to fast. I'm always like, oh, I feel like I feel worse, you know. So I feel like it's that courage thing. It's that bravery thing. I love what you said about the fact that like the longer you like if you keep getting scared, you run away. Like the longer you leave it, the harder it's gonna be. When you get old, it's gonna be brutal. So I love that. I'm sure you can respond to that. But my quick question I wanted to ask was about the lemon. Do you like fruitarians and like teeth care, for example, with stuff like the lemon? Like if let's say you're fasting and you're having a lot of lemon juice, what's recommended for teeth care? Could the acids eat away at your teeth? Like, let's say you're doing like a lemon juice fast. I love lemon juice. I love citrus. And when I want to fast or cleanse, I feel really drawn to citrus. But then I also feel like I feel it in my teeth and my gums, and I worry that I might be damaging my teeth. So if anything you could share on that would be helpful.
Yeah. So yeah, that's one of those things where, of course, in perfect circumstances where we have perfectly ripe fruit, it's not acidic, it's not just questionably ripened, or they use some kind of weird toxic stuff to ripen the fruit, then those issues aren't as big a deal. But also sometimes people forget they'll want to blame fruit for the teeth issues when it was really their previous diet, and the teeth are exposing the weaknesses, or the fruit exposes the weaknesses. And then if you have any elimination where that lymph fluid, if it's stagnant around here, and that's when you can get the puffy, it gets a little puffy, and you could can feel weird and be scary. That's the time when it's recommended not to go to a dentist, because they'll want to pull all your teeth out, some of them. But because that's like a detox symptom. If you're going through that, then once you're done with it, your gums grab back onto your teeth and everything's great. But that's where, like, Dr. Morris's points are spot on in terms of the lymphatic stagnation. When you got this lymphatic stagnation up here, those acids are irritating your nerves from within. And so if you have, and then if there is any poor dental hygiene on the outside, or just and there's acids, because they're more focused on the dentist dental sort of culture is obsessed with the outside of the teeth, but have no concept of actually keeping the inside clean by way of making sure your lymph fluid is moving and there's just not stagnant. But in terms of practical care, I recommend using, if you're drinking a lot of juice and citrus and that kind of stuff, using a straw. And that's something that I'd started doing years into practicing the diet. But using a straw and not doing like what I used to do when I started, where I loved the juice so much I would swish it in my mouth. I had to stop doing that. And because I've never had there was just times where I already was prone to teeth sensitivity, because at a young age they had been giving me antibiotics that actually like stain the back of my teeth, like way in the back. It's brown, it's kind of weird looking, and that was all when I was a child from the drugs that they were giving me. And so most of when I started practicing the diet, my enamel was already gone because of the drugs that they did. So what I find is helpful is the oil pulling. Yeah, the coconut oil pulling, if you're familiar with those practices. And I used to do it more because really now I only do it if there is some kind of sensitivity, but I haven't had any. Very rarely. I might oil pull like once every couple months or something. But if there was sensitivities there, or I noticed if I do eat a lot of citrus and I would get into irritating the enamel at all, then I would just kind of go right to the oil pulling. Then I use was it this brand called Boca. I don't know if any of you've seen that, this toothpaste that I like. And yeah, it's fairly natural, pretty, pretty I've never been real into the it's one I usually I usually don't talk a whole lot about that, because some people get so passionate about their lotions and their toothpaste and kind of stuff. Like for me, I'm just like, it either works or it doesn't. I'm not passionate about it. I could care less if anybody checks it out or not. It's one of them things. I'm just like, this works. Okay, I'm gonna use this. I've used lemon juice under my arms to kill. Well, it's lemon juice. I call it lemon juice air baths, where after shower, I just take half a lemon, get the juice, pat it under my armpit, and keep the armpits up for like 2 minutes to let it dry, and which is the key, because it's like an air bath. Arnold Ehret talks about air baths, but I applied it to under the armpit. There is because your BO is going to come from one of two things. There's either the external bacteria that builds up, which I don't care how clean you get inside, that stuff is still can build up on the outside, or you get the nasty stank that's coming through your pores from the inside. If you've been on the diet long enough, a lot of that stank is gone, but bacteria could still build up in crevices in different places. And so that lemon juice for me has, I don't know, I've done that for like 15, 16 years or something. And that got me away from all those stupid deodorants and chemicals and that kind of stuff. But yeah, but that's kind of my thing there. But I do advocate general, brushing teeth, and if you got an air or water pick, and just taking care of the teeth, that general maintenance. Of course, no fluoride. Don't use that. Try to find natural products, or as natural as you can, and and take care of your teeth.
Professor Spira, should you brush your teeth after you have a fruit, like a acidic type of fruit meal every time, or rinse or anything, or you think just having smoothies with a straw is fine? I'm just curious about eating the fruit, if you have any tips on that, like right after, or not really, it's not that important.
I mean, it's a good practice to do if it definitely doesn't hurt anything, just to do a quick, doesn't have to be a real long kind of thing, but you could either rinse or just brush your teeth real quick, do a quick little brush, and I think I recommend that. And as far as the oil pulling, you'd only have to do that once a day. You don't have to do that unless you have really chronic problems, then you can maybe do it twice a day. But that's like 20, because it's a 20-minute pull that I do. It's if I do it, I'll fill my mouth with the oil and swish it around for 20 minutes and then spit it out. But yeah.
Cool, thank you. I know Brendan had a question, but if you don't, that's okay. But if you do, you can unmute and ask. And I'll also ask a question from Zoe, who couldn't make it today, but she'll have a question. So yeah, Brendan, feel free if you want, but if not, I'll go to Zoe's. So Zoe's question was, would you say the healthiest way to build would be activity and movement versus any kind of food or nutrition? And the best time might be when you naturally feel the most energy to do so. Yeah, because in the Fruit Fit community, we're interested in health, but we're also interested in fitness. And we talked last time about the difference. And sometimes in those cycles of when we want to detox, and probably like we're going to get more skinny and weak for some time, but also the time when, okay, now I want to have a muscular body and be a strong man and be that kind. So would you say, what would you say would be that healthiest way to build this? And do you have any activity or movement that you really like to do, or is it more focused on the nutrition too?
So first thing I would say, and we're probably the only ones that I know of that has this particular analysis, but in the mucusless diet, Arnold Ehret views the body in two, or just the human bodies into two different types. So you have a lean type, or what many of us call a uric acid type of physiology. These are the people who in mainstream the dietetics, they would say, has a high metabolism. So the type of person that's very, very skinny, no matter how much they eat, they really don't pick up any waste. So Arnold Ehret analyzes that physiology as somebody that's, has more acidic interference with the body, as opposed to somebody that's more of a fat type or a mucus type, which is the type of person that you could have a couple bites, but you're not going to lose any kind of weight. You're not going to really get smaller. You can only really get bigger. And so those, I won't go into too much detail, those different physiology types, but understanding that is, in my opinion, crucial to making the most informed and best choices with your transition, as well as with your exercise. But I mention this because you have to first accept your physiology and understand what it is, like why do you have it, what it is. So if you are really slender and have more of an acidic level of physiology, then you want to know that, and then you can take steps to deal with that. And so for instance, if somebody is really, really skinny, they're like, okay, I'm a lean type, then I'm probably not going to recommend that person go on a long fruit, even though these are the type of people that tend to do long fruit juice fast or fruit fast. Somebody with that physiology, unless they're going through some kind of deep detox symptoms, I'm going to put them on vegetable juices to neutralize those acids. And what happens once those acids are neutralized, all of a sudden they start picking up weight. The muscle, even without working out, muscles start like, oh, why? Because the acids have been neutralized. They don't neutralize this in the same way. And you take somebody that has never went through that acid neutralization process, and they go and eat nothing but fruit for long periods of time, or they go do nothing but fruit juice, they never really have properly neutralized those acids, and then they, again, you get all those cravings. All that stuff comes out of the acid world, the cravings for all the bad food, all that stuff. And so so that's the first thing that comes to mind, is physiologically you had to accept where you're at and understand what you're doing, in terms of that. Now, I'm an advocate for real strength, vitality, and longevity, as opposed to this desire to try to, what some people, they want their beach body and they want this perfect kind of body. And I am more on the, go on your physiological journey transitionally, because you don't want to get attached to any, because you could go through several years where, it's like, oh man, this is my perfect body. Then you go through some kind of elimination that takes you into a whole different physiological journey, and it's one that you need, where you might not look perfect, you might not, be like, damn, I was 5 years ago, I looked great, but now you're going through something, you're going through part of the journey. And so that's where I'm kind of like, don't get addicted to some of these, wanting to just, look perfect and this and that kind of stuff all the time. Now, I will say, for me, 21 years in, I'm way stronger today than I was 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. And I'm way, just in terms of just actual strength and vitality, it doesn't even compare. But it happened naturally. It wasn't like I did really cultivate it through the removal of internal waste, and then and then I go and I have my stretching and my workout and that kind of stuff that I do, but it's not a primary focus, so for us, yeah, physiology is really, really key. But if you are hardcore uric acid type, it's not going to help you to go in the gym and just go crazy, and then you're going to be like, why I'm not building any muscle, I'm not, then that and that's why people that have that type of physiology get addicted to the protein powders and protein eating and all this kind of stuff, because you're eating poison simultaneously for stimulation, as well as this cosmetic thing that has been compromised by our lifestyle. You know, the way that we see what we think is and isn't healthy is skewed. It's messed up. Most people don't know what health, like real health, looks like, you know, real longevity, because we got to look, there's people that look great, and then a lot of those people aren't, you know, they're not living, you know, in the 80s, 90s, 100, you know, that kind of stuff. And so yeah, that's just some thoughts on that. But physical movement, and you know, Eric discusses the importance of that. So physical activity every day, and he's got some exercises in there that are kind of, they're pretty unique kind of exercises. They're almost like physical therapy type of exercises that hit things in a real different way. But you know, your yoga, whatever it is that you're attracted to, which is very important to get the movement and the stretching. And but even then, I'm looking at it from a physiological standpoint, where when I work out, I'm in it for the blood circulation, in terms of, because I don't need to, like I said, I'm not you know, like I don't need to bench press 400 pounds. But I still, when I'm in the gym, half the time I'm still lifting more than people in there, which sometimes confuses me, because I'm like, you guys are supposed to be all high on proteins and meat and stuff. I'm not supposed to be stronger than y'all. But you know, it's one of those things where, I guess for me, yeah, the fit, when you're doing that, even working out becomes, the reason becomes physiological, where you're doing it to get the blood flowing, and when you stretch, you get that fresh blood, because you've been cleaning your blood with what you're eating. Then you stretch, and that fresh blood is able to get in deep into the muscles and the tissues, and you get deep into the body in the places that it couldn't go before. And so then that becomes the reason that you do it, because you're still transforming your physiology and cleaning your blood and cleaning your entire body and taking it deeper with the physical activity. And Eric said, one of his favorite exercises was dancing, and dancing every day, just like the importance of, you know, just, you know, a lot of people don't think about, like, oh, dancing. He just, like, yeah, it was funny in the book, because it's older. He was like, you put on an old Victrola record of some marches and dance around to, you know, some 1910 marches and stuff. But yeah, no, physical activity, very important. But I think it's important to understand it within the context of the physiological transformation, not just to try to look good, but for that longevity physiologically.
Thank you so much, Professor Spira. And we always love to have you. So, you know, last time we went for like more than 2 hours. And I thought this time let's try to keep it in the hour. But yeah, let's have you again very soon. It's always such a pleasure. And yeah, of course, I'll put that video on YouTube also. There'll be the links to your channel, to what you're doing, in the description. And thank you everyone who joined also from the community and asked the questions. And if anyone wants to join the community, the Fruit Fit community, of course, you can find the information also in the description of the video. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Professor Spira. Sending much love to listeners, to you guys. And let's do this again very soon.
All right.
Okay, you can unmute and say bye, everyone. Bye.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Quite welcome. Take care.
Thank you all.
Stay strong.